Just the little math there for you. Welcome to The Jump. I am Rachel Nichols alongside NBA reporter, Lakers insider Dave Mcmenamin, as well as NBA champion and, of course, graduate of Cass University, Kendrick Perkins. Graduate also of Cass University in terms of a brand new contract with ESPN. Congratulations. We are so thrilled to have you even more officially on board with us this season. You're going to see a lot of Kendrick out there, and that is good for everyone. Coming up, in fact, Kendrick's Twitter feed has inspired a new game here on The Jump called Retweet or Delete. Stick around for Perk's fuego takes on the Warriors, the Cowboys, and conflict resolution. You know you don't want to miss that. First, though, so you can imagine that when the schedule makers set up the Lakers and Warriors preseason game at Staples Center last night, they dreamed of a rollicking evening where Steph Curry and Draymond Green battled LeBron and Anthony Davis. What they got instead was a surreal scene about 90 minutes before tip, when LeBron James and Steve Kerr each stepped into the hallway between the home and visitors' locker rooms to meet the media and individually answer questions about the political situation in a country half a world away. And yet, that's what the NBA has become over this past week. Most of basketball drowned out by a referendum on free speech, human rights, political opportunism, and the weight of financial profit. Up until last night, we hadn't heard LeBron's thoughts on any of this, but boy, did that change. He started generically enough, repeating what we've heard from others, that he didn't feel qualified to directly address the politics of what's going on in Hong Kong, that he only wanted to make statements on issues he feels passionately about. And then, well, then he was asked about Rockets GM Daryl Morey and the original tweet that had ignited this whole thing. Here's LeBron's answer.
I don't want to get into a word or sentence feud with Daryl. Morey, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke, and so many people could have been harmed, not only financially but physically, emotionally, spiritually. So just be careful what we tweet and we say and what we do. Even though yes, we do have freedom of speech, but there can be a lot of negative that comes with that too.
The comments sparked a backlash pretty much the moment LeBron made them. Here's a tweet from Florida Senator Rick Scott. Quote, "Clearly King James is the one who isn't educated on the situation at hand. It's sad to see him join the chorus kowtowing to communist China and putting profits over human rights for Hong Kong." We also got these tweets from the Celtics' Enes Kanter, who himself has been extremely outspoken on the politics of his native Turkey. And then in Hong Kong, a very harsh reaction. Here are some photos of protesters who are now carrying anti-LeBron signs and have even lit his jersey on fire. LeBron has tweeted himself to try to refine his position, saying, quote, "Let me clear up the confusion. I do not believe there was any consideration for the consequences and ramifications of the Morey tweet. I'm not discussing the substance. Others can talk about that." And then adding, quote, "My team and this league just went through a difficult week. I think people need to understand what a tweet or statement can do to others. And I believe nobody stopped and considered what would happen. Could have waited a week to send it." So there's a lot there, but there's also actually more. A few minutes after his public comments, LeBron took about 10 extra minutes to speak to the 4 American reporters who had traveled all the way to China last week, but never got any media time with anyone. Dave Mcmenamin and I were 2 of those people. We can both tell you that in the more private setting, you could more clearly feel how the frustrations of the entire week may have led to LeBron depositing some of that anger on Morey. LeBron also reiterated that his criticisms of Morey were not about Morey's stance on Hong Kong, but about Morey tweeting the way he did. Still, it was obvious that in the previous few minutes, he had rekindled the entire firestorm. And so as he was heading back to the locker room, I asked him where this whole China controversy ranked for him. After all, this is a player who's been through some things, good and bad, being drafted #1 overall, opening a school, watching fans burn his legacy in Cleveland, becoming a target of the President of the United States. He answered, quote, "When you grow up in the community I grew up in, you've got people that are smiling at you who want to see you gone the next day. So this blank, it's nothing." Certainly a dose of perspective. All the Twitter thumb warrior outrage that's coming LeBron's way today is indeed not comparable to some of the violence and real outrage that he saw growing up. But it's still outrage, and last night made clear it's not dying down anytime soon. Kendrick, what was your biggest takeaway from LeBron's comments last night? And then those were pretty graphic photos we saw from Hong Kong today.
Right. Well, first of all, when LeBron interviewed, he didn't agree or disagree with Daryl Morey's tweet. He didn't say he was right or he was wrong. All he said was the timing of the tweet, and that basically, you know, he spoke up for not only just the players, the coaches, but Dave, Rachel, you guys were in China also. He spoke up for y'all safety. You know, no matter how you want to look at it, but if you ever been to China, once you step foot in their territory, they are in control. And you have two beautiful twins at home. You have a family. You want to get back home to your family. He spoke up for safety. He didn't say whether or not it was right or wrong, and people took it out of context and just went at Bron for not speaking up. But they do have to realize that Bron is the face of the NBA. He's the face of Nike basketball. And whether or not, if he speaks up on that, either way, he's going to get backlash. So he's just pretty much taking a back seat. And I think it's more on the NBA to speak up. It's more of Adam Silver's job to control this situation. This is not on LeBron. And on another note, when you look at things, NBA players go through media training as players, social media training, and they tell you different things on before you hit the send button to rethink this. Maybe GM should go to media training or stuff like that, because Daryl Morey, outside of Magic Johnson, is one of the most active GMs that tweets all the time. But I never seen, and I follow Daryl Morey, but I never once seen him tweet about things that's happening in his own country. So why take a stance on when you all are over there in China in a whole nother country and decide to send out a tweet like that? Was very selfish, and you wasn't looking out for others. So LeBron is not the selfish person at hand. Daryl Morey actually is.
Right. And LeBron is as savvy as a player we've seen. He owns a media company.
Right.
And so usually we see him tap dance around issues, come out sounding eloquent, well thought out, incisive. He wasn't that last night. Had he not used words like misinformed or uneducated when discussing Daryl Morey's tweet, had he just said, Daryl Morey didn't think about the ramifications of what this tweet would mean to his team, to me, the league, et cetera, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. Because LeBron's been so savvy over the years, he puts himself in a situation where there's higher expectations upon him. And I don't think he gave his most eloquent, well thought out response. Now, some of that could be because he was just so frustrated with Daryl Morey. I mean, literally for a week, he was stewing about the situation that he found himself in because of this tweet. His team goes over to China. They're worried about their safety. They're shut in their hotel. All these business opportunities are, disappearing into thin air because the Chinese government is canceling things left and right. Meanwhile, LeBron has a chance to be in a meeting with Adam Silver the day before the game was played in Shanghai. And quite pointedly, he said to Adam Silver, I'll paraphrase, you know damn well if a player made a tweet like this or made a statement like this, there would be repercussions that were coming from the league.
Absolutely.
And the response he got from Adam Silver was, I am going to defend the freedom of speech that Daryl Morey had, even if it had an unintended fallout like this had. And so to think about that for a week and to think about what he had to go through, what his Lakers teammates had to go through, what all their family members that traveled with him had to go through, he was asked the question, what should the league do about Daryl Morey now? And because he didn't get any answer that he wanted to hear from Adam Silver, he tried to express the answer he would have, meted out.
Right, but as you said, look, this was not a question of LeBron being taken out of context. He said what he said. Now, I just don't think he said what he meant. But he did say it. He said he's not educated about the situation. He didn't say he was not educated about the ramifications. He only clarified that later. So you're right. I don't think this was his best effort media-wise. Look, he's been doing this for 17 years. You're going to have nights where you don't speak exactly what you mean to say. He did go out of his way to clarify it later, both in person to you and me, on Twitter, that sort of thing. Obviously, that's not good enough for people who are protesting in Hong Kong or politicians who are looking to take these kinds of political opportunities, which obviously we saw Rick Scott do. To me, there is a larger question, though, beyond this, right, of who is now responsible for what? And Kendrick, I actually thought you had a really interesting contribution to that last night on Twitter. We're going to get to Kendrick's tweets later. They're always so good. But you were saying, I haven't seen Daryl Morey speak out on, I believe you were talking about an unarmed man who was shot by police in Dallas, in the state where Daryl lives. And it just sort of sparked a question for me of, if you make any comment, if you're an NBA player or a GM or coach, and you make any comment on any kind of social issue, do we now expect as a society for you to have to comment on everything? Are we going to ask Daryl Morey to comment on what's going on in the border of his state in Texas, even though that might have political ramifications too? I'm not saying that we should. I'm not saying Daryl Morey should have to answer for that. I'm just curious if we've crossed a line with athletes where we now feel that athletes, coaches, GMs have to comment on everything if they're going to speak about anything. Have we gotten to that point? I don't know.
No, we haven't. And to be honest, Rachel, I was just making the example. And my thing was that my question to Daryl Morey is why? Like, I never heard you tweet so many things. You respond to people on Twitter. And at this point in time in China, why did you feel the need to speak up and say something when I never heard you speak up about all the things that's going on in America? It wasn't just that one situation that happened in Dallas. It's everything that's going on in the United States. I never once heard him speak up on anything. So why at this moment you decide to speak up in China when we over there in China, you guys are in China, the players are in China, and China is one of our biggest, they're one of our biggest supporters in the NBA thing. And it's not all about money, but at the end of the day, like I said, y'all were on their territory, and the safety was the key part. You needed to get back home to your families, and my thing was just why. I never seen you tweet about anything else, and you're right. You don't have to, in my opinion, you don't have to tweet every time something happens. But if you look at Greg Popovich, if you look at Steve Kerr, these guys tweet about everything that goes on in the United States.
We'll talk
it's
about
consistent.
it. I don't know if Greg Popovich is tweeting, but
well, not tweeting, but he's talking about it.
Absolutely.
But he's consistent with it.
Yeah.
So how all of a sudden Daryl Morey you decided to step in, it was just confusing to me, and it was just at the wrong time. And I'm with LeBron. If it was a player, they would have got penalized in some type of way. And I think just like players go to media training, social media training, also the GMs need to start doing it too.
Slippery slope if we expect them to continue to speak on any issue. The problem that I see here is, where does this end? And is this going to be something?
Apparently we will be talking about this story until the end of time.
This could be something that's attached to LeBron's legacy forevermore.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm personally not sure if it was a player, they would have been punished just because of the sensitivity around the situation and sort of the groundswell of support for freedom of speech that we've seen in this country. I think if it was a player, they would be getting the same support from the league as Daryl Morey has been getting. That being said, to your point, to LeBron's point, players certainly do get in trouble for things that they say on social media, and that line is always moving. And it is hard, I think, and frustrating for players sometimes to understand. I have a feeling we'll talk about this story again, but for right now, coming up, we're going to talk about Mark Cuban. He called his team the Gen Z Mavs to the ringer. Will Luka and KP be able to fill the shoes of the Gen X great Dirk Nowitzki? Also, Zach Norris